Hi, I'm Dustin Mason from Performance Lexus in St. Catharines. Today, let's check out the 2023 UX 250H. But before we get into that, make sure you hit subscribe on our channel so that you can see any of our latest videos. We have lots of stuff coming down the pipeline with not just Lexus related content, but some other brands as well. Okay, let's get right into it. So the UX 250H is the entry-level Lexus for price point. It also did replace a very important car in our lineup just a few years ago called the CT. Now the CT was super hot. It was a hybrid hatch, really good on fuel. I checked all the boxes. Now, the UX came out a few years ago, and at first it took people a little bit of time to get used to because it was so new to the lineup. But as soon as people started to see them on the road, guests were flooding in here, ordering them, and before very long there was a wait list on them. So let's find out why. So taking a look at the UX, you can see at first impression, it does have a very Lexus-like front end. And what I mean by that is this one is the luxury package. It still has the luxury spindle grille with some nice shapes and sizes there that give it a really aggressive look for being, on the smaller side. We also have some really nice daytime running lights up here above the headlight. This was probably, if I remember correctly, one of the first in the lineup to have them in that location with that combination. And we do have some parking sensors on that bumper, as well as washers for the headlights. This is something I've said in other videos that I really like when Lexus does this, because in Canada, we have salt on the roads for not the whole year, maybe half the year, maybe just over half of the year. So being able to wash that and make sure we have the most light coming out of those headlights is important to me, and I really like that. Otherwise, we just have some classy chrome at the bottom of that grille. I like the F-Sport version for the grille a little bit better, and just that aggressive styling. But I like the interior on this one better than the F-Sport, so I'll show you that in a second. But anyway, overall, really classy and aggressive front end that makes it kind of look a little bit bigger than the vehicle is, which is also a curse because a lot of times people come into our dealership looking at the UX and the pictures online make it look massive when in fact it definitely is on the smaller side. But let's take a look at the side profile. So as we work our way to the side, you'll notice it does have painted fender flares and they stick out quite far, which is cool. So at the top here, it's almost a finger and a half wide, and then it gets a little bit skinnier as you get to the bottom, but it gives it a really nice stance because the UX actually is a little bit wider than you'd expect with such a short wheelbase. So really squared off design, but those aggressive fender flares make it look really sharp. Now, taking kind of a zoomed out look, you'll see we have a couple things going on here. It is a bit taller of a vehicle, so the entry height is a little bit more like an SUV, so it's easy to get in and out of if you don't like getting down into a car, but you also don't like getting up into a truck. It is a little bit more hip height, which is nice. And because of that, the way the design flows, you'll see it kind of opens up and then squares off at the back instead of like slowly tapering down like we've seen with other hatchback designs. Things like the Prius or any wagon type vehicle, it really does kind of wait till the last minute and then square off, which is pretty cool. And because of that, obviously we have not only height, but full-size doors. And the styling as you work your way to the back is interesting because there is a couple jagged lines here, one of them being this rear taillight. There's almost like a little curvature to it. It must be to capture the air, or what we saw in Toyotas and Lexuses just a few years ago was a vortex generator at the rear taillight. And if you don't know what that is, Google it. And maybe that's why this design is really capturing that airflow. I'm not 100% sure, but it's there, so that's cool. Also, we have a little bit of details on the taillights, which I'll show you. So this was one of the first designs a few years ago when it launched to have, that full left to right single taillight design. I really like it. I think it's cool that it goes from wide and gets really sharp in the center and then back wide again. I think, when you're behind one of these in traffic, it does look super sharp, super high end. I just like taillights in general, and this is one that's super pretty, so I like that. We do have an exposed rear wiper here at the bottom of the windshield. I know some of our SUVs have them hidden up above. but this particular one is exposed right in the middle. I'm sure there's a reason for that. And if you open up the trunk, you'll see it's a very nice height. So when you're loading anything in or out of it, you're not reaching down into a car and you're not lifting it over your head. It's kind of hip height. So any heavy boxes, you know, if you're leaving Costco or you have hands full of groceries, you can kind of just plop it in there without, you know, straining yourself. And guess what? It even has the little hooks that I love so much when it comes to hooking your groceries. I really like that. For the cargo cover, it's the soft design and it folds up into this little bag. At first, when this style came out a couple years ago, I didn't love it. But it's because I didn't really realize how important it is that it folds up like this. For instance, on some of the bigger SUVs, I'll be loading something in at my house and that cargo cover will be in the way one time. You know, because of that, I'll end up putting it in my garage, forgetting about it, and not having it in there when I need it. Where this little soft cover, you can fold it up, you can place it in some storage underneath the rear cargo area, or put it in the back seat or whatever, but at least you'll still have it, which is cool. Size-wise, could you fit 2 sets of golf clubs? Absolutely not, unless you fold down the rear seats. It's not super big back here, it's not super long. I mean, the width is okay, but it doesn't have a whole lot of depth in terms of trunk space. So if you are expecting to have a lot of cargo, you will have to fold down at least one of those 60-40 rear seats, or just take up some of that back seat space. But it's a commuter car, so this isn't one that you're gonna be buying as a family car or the main family car, maybe as a secondary car, and that's totally okay because the fuel economy definitely makes up for it. But overall, super practical. The design back here looks absolutely gorgeous, and you know, let's take a look at the inside. Okay, so in the UX, there's surprisingly a lot to go over for such an entry-level price point. The first thing is a little Easter egg. So on the luxury package, the material of the dashboard is supposed to resemble origami paper. The reason that's important is it's a little bit of a homage to some Lexus history and you know, some of the craftsmanship that Lexus has. What I mean by that is in the Lexus production world, there is something called a Takumi, which is like a master craftsman. And to be a Takumi, the final test, as said, is to create an origami cat, the specific one, using your less dominant hand, blindfolded, in under 5 seconds or under 10 seconds or something like that. So it's been something that Lexus has carried since the 90s, that is what a Lexus craftsman or a Takumi is kind of tied with, and that is why we have some origami style paper. I just like the look of it. I think it captures the light quite well, even though it's kind of like a black dashboard with that texture that's there. It reflects some light and makes it look more gray in certain areas, so I really like it. The rest of the interior we have sort of a matte black brushed aluminum, and what I mean by that is it has the brush marks like brushed aluminum has, but it's all matte black, which kind of makes it more modern, I guess you could say. So I'm a big fan of that. Some of the other panels are just like a matte plastic. I hope it's not too easy to scratch. I don't think it would be, but you know, it is an interior, so you gotta be careful with that. And they did get rid of there was like a little Lexus touchpad here. And Lexus tried out something interesting a few years ago, is that your volume, your tuning, all that was kind of controlled here by like a panel you'd put your palm on, and then you would use your dexterity to control that. That's all gone now because of the new Lexus interface, which is a screen a little bit closer to the driver. You just touch it, and most of that's controlled by, you know, Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, all of those types of smart interfaces, I guess you could say. So here we just have, you know, our heated and cooled seats, our heated steering wheel. It's all very, you know, comfortable to get to. Another thing I like is the way the shifter works. It's very satisfying because you sort of just use your thumb to squeeze the shift release button, and then you just kind of put it down. And for some reason, the UX and the ES have the same one, and it's like the most comfortable thing I've ever felt. I don't know if it's the way it hugs the inside of your thumb or just like the fact that it is your thumb. I don't know, but it works out really, really well. To the bottom of that, we just have our EV mode, so you can put it in a full electric mode for slow speeds, if you have a lot of things running or if the battery depletes enough, it'll just kick into gas mode anyway. But it's kind of you just telling the car, hey, can I please have EV mode right now? And it's great for like pulling it in and out of a garage or just in those times that you just want to run on full EV. Most of the time, just let the car do the thinking, because it's gonna know, when to fire up that internal combustion engine, when to have it just electric, when to charge the battery, et cetera, et cetera. But if you want to override it, there is a button there. In the center, we have the center console that can open from both sides. So remember, this first came out in the LS when that was redesigned in 2018, and then the ES, and now RX, NX. So it's coming out for everybody, and we have that in the UX, which is nice. And we got a little compartment here, which I don't know what you would put in. But in the center, we have, USB, enough room for a couple phones or whatever. It is a normal USB port in the center here, and 2 USB-Cs up here on the front. And this is the wireless charging pad just below that. So, that's pretty straightforward there. For switches and things like that, we have all of our climate controls on this little switch panel here. So they're all very, you don't have to, even if you never drove this car before, you wouldn't have to think about how to work them. It's just switches, super easy to use. As I mentioned, that screen is a little bit closer and way more high definition than previous models. And it kind of just goes to show, like, for an entry level, all the materials and screens and everything like that are really high quality. And that's super impressive at this price point, for sure, because I know some of the competitors even still have a key to start it in this price point. So it's kind of nice. It's kind of nice to see still above and beyond from Lexus when it comes to the entry level stuff. Now, other than that, we just have our basic steering wheel controls with, radar cruise control, lane departure alert. All that stuff comes standard with the UX and is controlled very easily on the steering wheel. Then we have a TFT display for the gauges that can change a little bit depending what drive mode you're in. And to switch drive mode, it's simply just this little switch up here. So that's part of the driver and control concept from a few years ago, that when you have your hands on the wheel and your eyes on the road, you can still see the drive modes and be able to switch through them without it being a distraction, which is great. Other than that, this particular one does have heads-up display, which I love heads-up display. I think it's great, especially at nighttime. I just really like those crisp details kind of floating above my steering wheel. So I always love to see that. And I don't know if this particular package has it, but when the UX launched a few years ago, there was a worldwide new feature. And what it was on the vents here, there was a light that would light up, and it was wirelessly lit. So you would be able to see where the dial is, whether it was on or off or where it was. And it was turned on remotely. So when your headlights would turn on, it would sort of turn on. Like I said, I don't think this one has it. And I think it was charged up by the airflow or something like that. So there's a little battery in there, and I think the airflow would keep it charged up because it was fully wireless. It was just a cool little flex that Lexus did. Again, it was kind of like one of those things that there was no real need for it, but it was cool to show off. And I love when car brands do that. So that was kind of cool to see. Otherwise, black headliner, some garage door programs, soft touch dome lights and reading lights. And it comes standard with a power moonroof. But other than that, very impressive interior, especially for this price point. Some really nice materials, some nice layers to the dash and design, which is good to see. And even for a small car, it feels very spacious in the front seat. So sitting in the back seat of the UX, this is where it might have been misleading for you by looking at pictures online. And what I mean by that is it is a little small. I know the design of the vehicle makes the vehicle look a little bit bigger, but the actual leg space in the UX is a little on the small side, but it's kind of supposed to be. This is more of a commuter car. It's not, like I said, it's not really made to be your number one family car. It could work, like even I'm 6'1", my head, I still have lots of headroom. But my legs, I mean, if I was sitting behind myself, it is a little tight. I can still fit here, I can still get into it. Would I want to sit back here for 9 hours? It kind of reminds me of being in like a small plane, but it does do the trick, and it does work, and it does have great fuel economy. Back here, we still have 2 USB-Cs. So again, in this price point of vehicle, a lot of times cars don't even have any climate control, or not climate control, but climate venting coming back here. And we have 2 vents, we have 2 USB-Cs, we have a couple cup holders and an armrest to go on, and believe it or not, even the handle to get in and out is a little bit higher quality. It's got like a leather texture to it. It's like a soft rubbery sort of like grippiness. And even that wasn't, you know, there wasn't any corners cut there. So it is what you would expect it to be for a commuter car. And I don't have anything to complain back here about. So in summary, I'm gonna tell you 2 quick stories. The first one is one of my most experienced salespeople that work here at Performance Lexus has driven all of the cars in the lineup, and I'll never forget the time he had to drive one of these to a guest about 45 minutes away, and he called me from the car because he was so impressed with how smooth it was driving and asked if I could price one out for him. When he got back that day, he bought one and drove it for a while. That was impressive because he was coming from an ES350, which is known to be smooth. So the drive on the UX for being a small car, not even for being a small car, just in general, is very, very smooth. It feels like a luxury car. It's well planted, the handling's fun, and the fuel economy is great. It's got 6 liters per 100 kilometer combined, and it's all-wheel drive, so that hybrid powertrain with the all-wheel drive makes it super versatile, and very impressive, and this is a new thing for me. I recently watched a video, I think it was done by a YouTube channel called Automotive Press. I hope I'm not butchering that, but I think that's who did it. And the gentleman on there went over this car with a fine-tooth comb. He's an engineer. And what he came out with after watching his video is the build quality on this Lexus not only is great for a Lexus, but also great for the, anything in the industry. And what I mean by that is the variances between the panels, the quality of the paint, the thickness of the paint, all of these things spelled out to be a car that would be like twice the money or triple the money, and it's on the UX. So the build quality is amazing. I think it's very future-proof with the hybrid technology that's in it, and the fact that even in the future, people are always gonna love cars that are great on gas. So the UX checks all those boxes for me. So if you're looking for a hybrid vehicle and something to commute with or something in the city, the UX is great for the money. It starts around the 45 mark in Canada. The fully loaded one's more closer to like the 50 mark, but still, for the money, it's absolutely amazing. So thank you for watching. I'm Dustin Mason at Performance Lexus in St. Catharines. We are a real dealership. So if you do have any questions about the UX or any of the other cars in the lineup, please shoot me a message or a comment, and I'll do my best to get back to you. Anyway, I'll see you in the next video.